One big problem that women experience in relationships with a man is that the man either gaslights her, withdraws, attacks, argues, in situations where he has done something wrong, broken his word in some kind of way, lied, made a mistake, whatever it is, rather than just being a man or being a mature human being and owning up to what he did, right? Because if we're looking at what a man should do in situations where he did something genuinely wrong, it's be like, hey, babe, I made this mistake. I said I was going to do this and I didn't do it, or I lied in some way, and I apologize. It was a really big mistake. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Whatever it is, right? In the context, just owning his mistake, being responsible, and then that's that. But a lot of men don't do that, and a lot of women experience those men who don't do that. And how is a woman going to feel? What is her experience going to be when dealing with a man like that? Well, the biggest thing is, you might feel a lot of things, but the biggest thing is she's going to tend to feel, I'm going to use the word unsafe. That's not actually a feeling, but she's going to feel anxiety, right? That's going to be the feeling. She's going to feel a lot of anxiety, because how can a woman submit? How can a woman follow a man's lead? How can a woman trust a man to lead her, to take care of her, to be the one that's making the decisions, when he's not in integrity, when he's not able to be fully accountable for his decisions? What other decisions is he going to make? Where else is he going to lead her where he's not going to own it when he makes a mistake, right? For a woman to truly trust a man deeply, for her to be able to energetically let go of all control and be led, submit to a man. So that's what healthy submission is, right? When she's letting go, she's not complying with him. She's not doing it to please him or anything. She's doing it because she's able to energetically let go and flow with him. For her to be able to do that, she needs to be able to trust him, right? And for her to be able to trust him, he needs to be accountable for everything that he does, every kind of problem that he does. Bethany, yeah, this is recorded. It'll be on my YouTube and on my Facebook and in my free group on Facebook. Yeah, so she needs that. And to be clear, to be very clear before we keep going in this video, that is a man's responsibility. No matter what a woman does prior to this, right? No matter how a woman communicates prior to this, it is his job to be accountable. And there's no justification for not being accountable. All right? We clear on that? Good. Because a lot of people have trouble with that and trouble with what I'm going to say next. So what I'm going to say next is, it's important to understand for women, for any woman that's listening to this, is that a major, or maybe the major reason for men not being able to just be that accountable, take that accountability for mistakes, is because of the way that she is communicating with him. Okay? That doesn't make her responsible for him not taking accountability. Okay? But she does need to be responsible for her own behavior, and it's important for her to understand, for you to understand, for the women listening, that how you show up is going to very strongly influence how he shows up. Okay? So, for example, if a man does something, let's say he breaks his word. He says he's going to do something really nice for you, and then he doesn't, let's just say. And you go into blaming, you go into judging him, you go into kind of energetically penetrating him in some way. It is going to massively increase the chances that he does not take accountability. Massively, massively. If you showed up in a much different way, in a vulnerable way, in the way that we teach, that I teach and my team teaches women to communicate using feminine communication, there is a far better chance, far like significantly, like multiple hundreds of percent chance that he's going to respond responsibly and take accountability. Okay, we're going to talk more about that in a moment, but just we're going to just pause for a moment, and I'll use this opportunity to mention that this is what we talk about. This is what we talk about, and we role play in our masterclass. Okay, our polarized communication masterclass. It's really important for women to understand this, because if you learn how to shift your communication, if you learn how to communicate in a feminine way, you're going to get far different responses from men. And it's like the gaslighting, the withdrawal, the blaming, the arguing, the lack of accountability of a man is going to be something that you very rarely and eventually like never experience again, just by you shifting. Just by you shifting. Not by sending your man to watch my videos, not by sending your man to watch my masterclass, not by you sending your man to join our academy program. No, by you focusing on you. Because the way that your man is showing up is a reflection of how you are showing up. Yes, it is his responsibility to be accountable with his behavior. Okay, so this is not justifying his behavior. He is wrong for not stepping up and taking accountability when he makes some kind of mistake, when he breaks his word. He is wrong, and there's no justification for that, right? I would never say to a man, hey, you know what? It's totally cool that you gaslit your woman because she was blaming you or judging you or not being totally vulnerable. No, of course not. That would be total bullshit. Right? And if I'm doing a video for men, I'm going to be hard on them and be like, listen, you got to stop messing around and start being accountable. You got to man up here. But this is a video for women. So we're talking about what a woman can do. And what you can do is you can shift your communication and start doing that by joining our masterclass. By the way, the link for that, it should, if you're on Facebook, it should be above this video. I think I put that in. And I might not have. I'll do it after if I didn't. It's polaritymasterclass.com. And if it's on YouTube, it should be directly below this video in the little info box. So yeah, there's so much you can do. So understand, for a woman, let's get back to the fun here. For a woman, if you go into any kind of blame or judgment, and look, this doesn't have to be like angry blame and judgment, right? Like at the extreme spectrum is like, yeah, fuck you, you broke your word, like you shouldn't have done that, like you don't care about me, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and some women watching this, they might get to that point sometimes. There might be some women that have exhibited that, and obviously that's a big problem, but it doesn't have to be anywhere close to that. My wife, for example, okay, so years ago, before I started learning about polarity, before I started adopting masculine communication, before I started teaching my wife feminine communication, she was actually, we'll call it like quite mature when she would bring up problems to me. She would be very calm, emotionally centered, kind of like a good mom in a way, right? And I would be the one that is getting reactive. I would actually get triggered, and I would go into this like lack of accountability thing, and I would sometimes gaslight, and I'd blame and all that stuff. And again, no justification for that. I was acting like a boy, okay? But to understand why I was being compelled into this really unhealthy behavior, other than just not having the level of masculine embodiment that I should have, I was getting compelled into it because I was trying to resist her energetic penetration. That kind of masculine energy of kind of teaching me about myself, judging my behaviors as a problem, asking like penetrating questions, being my mom. So the more that a woman acts like that mom, that kind of masculine energy I'm referring to, obviously a mom can and should be much more feminine energy, but you know what I'm talking about. The more that she's like that, the more that a man is going to revert into being that little boy where he's not going to be responsible. That little irresponsible boy. Okay. So if you don't want your man to be that little boy, then you need to stop being that masculinized kind of mother figure, whether she's off center and crazy, or whether you're centered and kind of more respectful and everything. We'll call it respectful, like my wife was. Because, like I said, even my wife, who is kind of the best example of being kind of calm and everything, it still triggered me. It still triggered me into that. Now it's the opposite. Why is it the opposite? It's the opposite. Like I'll always 100% of the time take responsibility for everything now. Even when my wife isn't responding well, but when she's not responding well, I'm not inspired into being accountable. I can actually feel my triggers coming up. And what I will do is I will lead her into her feminine energy. I will lead her into using feminine communication. And then I'm inspired to be accountable. Why? It's because when a woman is being feminine, when she's not energetically penetrating her man, when she's opening herself up to share what she's experiencing in a vulnerable way, something cool happens. A man starts to feel like her hero in a way. Let's put it this way. Even if he messed up, right? Even if he made mistakes, it's kind of that same feeling that I have, working with children when like I'm the very clear authority figure, or I'm sure when my daughter's a little bit older. Right now, she's only 15 months, so she's not even talking. I can't really take responsibility for anything yet because she doesn't understand what I'm saying, or not enough of what I'm saying. Is that feeling of like, it feels good. It feels good to be accountable. It's like I'm giving a gift, giving my provision. It feels good to be honorable. It feels good to be in integrity, because it's an act of taking care of my woman, or taking care of my daughter, or taking care of anybody that is under my umbrella of leadership as a man. Okay. So it feels like being a hero. And that's so much easier to do than when a man feels like a little boy who's being reprimanded in some way. He's been bad, right? And he's being energetically penetrated in that way. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on. And so women are co-creating this experience. Not only that, like women are attracting those more irresponsible kind of men because they're more in their masculine energy to begin with, like the women are. And then they are bringing out those unhealthy qualities, that lack of accountability, that lack of of being responsible, by the way that they are communicating, by the way that they are showing up. Okay, it doesn't justify a man's behavior. Again, I'm going to say it does not justify a man's behavior, but understand why you are co-creating what you are co-creating. Last thing I'll say about this too, even if a woman was showing up perfectly, most vulnerable, innocent, feminine communication, just beautiful, is it still possible that a man might not take responsibility, own up to his mistakes? Yes, of course, right? For example, a legitimate, like diagnosed narcissist probably will not take accountability. And other men that just are very deeply stuck in wounding, in just unable to see themselves, just terrified of owning up to themselves, probably because their parents traumatized them so deeply by punishing them and shaming them when they did make mistakes, right? That understand that's where so much of this is coming from for men. This is a survival pattern, is to avoid owning responsibility, taking accountability, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's possible you could show up perfectly and a man's not going to shift still. But here's the thing. Here's what you need to understand, ladies. How are you going to know? How are you going to know because if you're dealing with a man who truly cannot take responsibility, that is dangerous. That is really dangerous. And, if you're not married to him, you should leave him. Like, don't even bother with that level, that lack of responsibility. If you are married, I don't know, over time things might shift, especially if you have kids, it's harder, but it still might have to leave. Because if a man can't be responsible, Well, how are you ever going to be able to be feminine? How are you ever going to get your needs met? How are you ever going to be safe? Right. So, things might shift very slowly over time. But at some point, whether it's right, depending on the situation, you may have to leave. But how are you going to know whether this is a situation? How are you going to know? Like, it's definitely partly a him problem, right? No matter what, because if he's gaslighting, withdrawing, avoiding, judging, blaming, arguing, it's at least partially a him problem for not being accountable. Definitely. How much of it is a you problem by not showing up in a feminine way where he's just inspired to want to be responsible and accountable? How are you going to know? Well, you need some level of information. You need some level of role modeling. You need some level of support and coaching to know, is this a me problem? What can I do? Am I actually still showing up in a masculine way? Am I still energetically penetrating? Am I making judgments unknowingly, even if my language sounds kind of feminine, right? Like if you've read my books, for example, here's the thing. So many people will read my books and they've been following me for months or a year or more than a year, whatever. And then they join our masterclass or they work with us in our academy program. And they're like, oh my God, I've actually been doing so much judging and so much blaming without even knowing, even though I read your books, even though I read all these examples of masculine and feminine communication. I thought I was communicating in a feminine way. And there's still so much that I wasn't, right? So if you just watch this video and you've read some of my books, or especially if you haven't read my books and you're like, oh no, I'm showing up in a feminine way, it must be him. You're not being responsible yourself because you don't even know. You don't know what you don't know. Okay. And if you don't know what you don't know, if you choose to leave a man or think that it must just be him, you're not being responsible for your own behavior. You must know first, am I truly being emotionally responsible? Am I truly being vulnerable? Am I truly being feminine? And if you don't know that, then you're going to continue co-creating something similar either with this man or your future man or a whole bunch of future men, your next 6 husbands that you keep divorcing or your 6 boyfriends that you keep breaking up with because you're not getting what you need to know to shift the pattern. That's why, at a bare minimum, start by joining our Polarized Communication Masterclass. All right. Our next one is in July. It's 2 hours, and we're going to go over all of the basics of what you need to know with masculine and feminine communication. And then we're going to role play situations for you. One of the situations is definitely where the man is not being responsible. He's not owning his mistake or mistakes, and the woman is communicating, well, first in a way that's co-creating that situation, and then afterwards in a way that's actually inspiring him to look at himself, see why he's showing up in this way, why he's not being the man that his woman needs, and then start energetically shifting. And this is what we experience, like what we're doing here in the masterclass is just what we've seen from our women clients when we work with them in our academy program, how their man shifts over time as they shift their communication patterns, as they shift into their feminine energy. Okay. So again, links, it's polaritymasterclass.com. If it's not in my Facebook above this video, I'm going to make sure that it is after this video. I'm going to try to add that if I'm allowed to add it. polaritymasterclass.com. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the first in the info box below, polaritymasterclass.com, and there's some information about it. 2 hours of us role playing, teaching you what this communication looks like so you can solve these problems, so you can empower yourself to shift this in yourself. Whether you're single, this is for single ladies as well, because I'm sure you've experienced this in the past. You don't want to experience it again in the future. Then learn how. Learn how to communicate. Learn how to attract different types of men. Learn how to attract different behaviors from men by shifting your own communication. So it's polaritymasterclass.com. Sign up. I will see you there. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be one huge step forward in changing your love life.